Scale, exit, repeat. Scale up your startup with Matt Cutter. Today we are talking about how to scale that startup. I know we've been talking a lot about scale in 2026. This is the year to scale. 2026 has been a great year for startups because of AI, because of the new technology that's hitting. We are going to be getting into deep with a conversation with Matt Cutter here. He's been a 12-year coach of helping very successful companies scale their businesses. And we're going to do that today. We're going to get in deep today and talk about that. We've got Michelle Van Tilborg, my co-host, on stage here. We got Mimi, we got Kyle, and we've got Matt. Matt, I see you're new to Clubhouse. That's interesting. We'll often get new members here, but that's awesome to have you on. This show will be sent out on podcast. It'll be recorded for other Clubhouse members to listen to on Startup Club. And we'll also turn into a national article. What we do every week is we take this show and we convert it from the transcripts and the conversations. We convert it into a pretty compelling article, and we really break it down. Mimi, our editor here, she's on stage. She's the one who works on this and breaks things down. Matt, welcome to the show. It's been I know Clubhouse might be new to you, it sounds. There you go.
Yes, it is. This is my first time.
Yeah, we've had a lot of first-time famous authors and guests come on Clubhouse. It's an interesting app. It's gone through its sort of iterations, scaled up very quickly and floundered a little bit, to be quite frank. And I know that today we're going to talk about scaling up. You've spent, I think, 12 years now coaching companies, successful companies, and how to scale their businesses. So the first question that I'm just going to throw right out there is, a lot of people listening to the show, they're startups, right? And scaling is not necessarily, it's not instinctual. That's what I've learned through my career and 30 years of scaling businesses and starting and scaling and exiting and repeating, obviously, but it's not instinctual. And first question I have for you, Matt, is you got into this space. Why did you do it? And is scaling something you really do need to learn?
Yeah.
Is it a skill?
Yeah. It's interesting. I actually got exposed to scaling up and to Burn Harnish back in the year 2000. And I had joined EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. At the time, it was called YEO. It was my first event, and Burn Harnish was the speaker, and he's the author of Scaling Up. Back then, it was called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. And we were, for the first 2 years, my partner and I, David Redlick, we were working in a business that we had sold, running the business for the people that we sold to. We then left that business to start another business and spent about a year trying to figure out what to do before we started our next business, which is restockit.com. But we were using the scaling up tools throughout that process. So in kind of 3 different modes. One was running an existing business that had been around at that point for 7, 8 years. Then in the startup year, trying to figure out what to do, we were using the scaling up tools. And then starting Restock It, we were using them. And what I found is a lot of the tools are good early and good for early stage, good for late stage. But some of the tools you have to customize a little bit. And I can elaborate. Do you want me to elaborate a little bit on that?
No, before we jump into that though, let's talk about, call it Restock It, right? I think I remember that company.
Yeah. So restockit.com, we started officially in March of 2004. And Restock It sold restaurant supplies, janitorial supplies, office supplies online. We built the business up, added products. We had over 200,000 products serving consumers and businesses. And then we sold the business in 2012. So we had a nice run with it, built the business up, and then sold it to an amazing company, a company called Acme Paper. They're a traditional restaurant janitorial supply company out of Baltimore. Great people, really wonderful people.
So how did you, when you're at this company, did you bring the scaling methodology from Vern Harnish, the scale up methodology directly into the company? Or did you like stumble upon it along the way?
So we brought the tools into Restock It, but we customized them along the way. we realized that some of the tools, especially in the early days, we realized that rocks, as an example, rocks are the idea of setting what are the 3 to 5 most important initiatives that the company's working on at the beginning of the year? What are the 3 to 5 most important initiatives for each person on, let's say, the leadership team? They're set quarterly traditionally. What we realized is when we were in startup mode, quarter was like forever. We could not, wait to set a goal for what's going to happen in 13 weeks. So we did monthly rocks. At one point, we switched even to weekly rocks for a little while.
So when you're saying rocks, what do you mean rocks?
Yeah. So rocks is the term. It actually originates from Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, I love that book.
Yeah, amazing. So the idea of a rock is there's rocks, there's pebbles, and there's sand. And we want to make sure the rocks are the big initiatives, the pebbles are the, let's say, medium-sized initiatives, and the sand are the day-to-day fires and things that pop up every day. And what happens is you go into a week, and if you don't know what your rocks are, you don't know what those big priorities are, then you're going to get gobbled up by the sand. You're going to have a day-to-day fires, customer issues, vendor issues, people issues popping up. And the next thing you know, you haven't even touched any of the most important initiatives. And that goes for weeks and months. So the idea is to set those initiatives clearly at the beginning of the quarter so that everybody's aligned and everybody knows what they're supposed to be focused on.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I went a lot in the Scale workbook and in the book Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. I talk about a little slightly different terminology. We call them winning moves.
Yep.
And we call them goal setting. And I work with Patrick Tian, who was Vern Harnish's business partner at the time, and they split up into 2 different companies. Vern runs Scaling Up and Patrick runs Rhythm Systems. And there are two ways to go here. One is, what are my winning moves for the next 3 years, 1 year, quarterly? And then what are my goals? And they're quite different. Can you talk a little bit about that? The difference between the rocks, I guess, the winning moves and the goals?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because one's an
absolutely.
outcome, right? Goals are an outcome, really, right?
100%. Yeah. And by the way, I know, I met Patrick way back when he was with Vern. He's phenomenal. I love his book and I really enjoy his content as well. Yeah. I am of the same philosophy. And the winning moves or rocks are initiatives, projects, things that you're going to get done, things that you're going to enhance. But then I also have goals, and my clients have goals, which are the handful of metrics that they're going to achieve set clearly every quarter. Some of my clients have all-time goals that are revenue, gross margin. Those always stay the same. But then they also set some quarterly focus goals where they'll say, okay, this quarter, we want to focus on customer satisfaction, let's say. And so this quarter, we're going to elevate customer satisfaction as a goal up to the top, and we're going to pay attention to it every week and throughout the quarter. And we're going to have a goal for the quarter for everybody to focus on and achieve.
Yeah, no, I like that. It is quite different. And I go back to we love stories. That's why I wanted to talk to you about the Restock It story and any of your actual stories that you've used. I'd like to actually do that before I jump in my own story, because I often do that. I'll go in my own direction here, but we're very lucky to have you here today. Tell me about life before you learned how to, maybe it's life before Vern. I don't know. It's life before Scaling Up, life before learning. Like, you were running a successful businesses before then. Why did you all of a sudden turn to this, and how did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, it was a total game changer. So I had gotten my MBA, undergrad degree, a lot of great stuff I learned, but compared to that day learning from Vern and then reading the book, literally it wasn't even close, because the MBA taught me some functional things, but the scaling up tools taught me how to run a business day to day, how to deal with people, how to have better execution, strategy, meeting rhythms, huddles. It just was, my eyes were blown to the point where, by the way, so I left that day with Vern, loved it. My partner and I thinking oh, how do we get Vern to help us? At the time, Vern was the only coach. He didn't have a coaching organization. This is the year 2000. He was very expensive, too expensive for us. And another friend of mine and I came out of there and started talking about it. He was at the session, and we ended up helping each other facilitate the other person's team's quarterly planning meeting every quarter. So every quarter I would go into his company and facilitate his quarterly planning meeting with his executive team. And then he would come in and facilitate my quarterly planning meeting. This is one of my still closest friends, Gil Bonwit. And so we were doing that and I loved it. So I had been doing that before I turned to coaching, which I can get to later. I had been doing that on the side for his company, for a few other, for other friends here and there, for some nonprofits. But I really found like the galvanizing elements of these tools to be able to help people figure out a better way of running their business. It was a huge aha for me when I learned it the first time.
Yeah, I think for me it was a bit of a shock. So I had seen Vern in 2002, 2003, similar time, and every time I listen to him, I'd say, "Oh my gosh, it's all such good stuff." I go back to the office and I try to implement it, and it was great for 2 months, and it just falls apart, right? Because I didn't have a coach. What you're describing there, that third party accountability, is something. But it wasn't until 2005 when we had a publicly traded company and our stock price had fallen. I was a CEO. I was one of the founders, and one of the board members came to me and said, "Look, we're going to need to find a professional leader, professional manager for this company, right?" And I was 36 years old. And obviously, I had a lot of older board members, venture capital board members, blah, 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 whatever. Right. And so I called a Lifeline, a friend of mine who's an EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, same organization that Matt's in here, by the way, as well. You're in YPO. I can't remember which, either way,
Yeah,
similar
I'm now in
organizations.
I'm in PO now.
Yeah, exactly. So similar. So I called up a Lifeline. He said, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy called Patrick D." And so I was actually doing the 20th anniversary of EO in Vegas, and I met with him for lunch. And I started talking to him about I just need the board off my back. He's going to give me some tools, make me look like I'm really smart and blah, 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 blah. And he says, "I'm not going to work with you, Colin." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I'm not going to work with you unless you go all the way, unless you do 90 of days of strategic planning, 88 days of execution, daily huddles, goal setting, quarterly goal setting, annual goal setting, individual goal setting, winning moves, winning strategies." And so, you know what? I said, "Okay, fine, I'll do it. Okay, fine, I'll do it." I managed, listen to this. Our company installed, we had installed at like 16 or $18 million. Our stock price was down $2 below its IPO price. And there were fights in the company. It was just a mess. Okay. I admit it. The revenue was stalled. Within 1 quarter, we saw massive results by bringing in a coach and implementing these these scaled systems. And within 3 years, the company almost tripled in revenue and sold to a Fortune 500 company for 17 times EBITDA, about 150% or whatever the number was over the IPO price. And it was a very big success. It was a very big Canadian successful story. It was the fastest growing company in Canada, even though it was an American based company. I've been in the States for 25 years, but it was still considered a Canadian story as well. And it couldn't happen without this entrepreneur who's got good instincts, myself, and but doesn't know what the hell he's doing when it comes to scaling up. And isn't that the case? Most entrepreneurs know how to start a business. They're great at start mode, but they don't necessarily know how to succeed at scale mode. What do you think?
I would stop short of saying most, but a lot. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who fit that category. There's no question about it. The other side of that, in addition, what got you here won't get you there. So you've got founders who start a business, get to a certain point, they grow from $1 to $10 million, $0 to $10 million. And then to get from 10 to 25 is a whole different deal, requires some different skills. So yeah, it is, some people can figure it out. Some leaders, founders are able to learn how to get better at things, how to improve their communication, how to learn new skills, how to hire, most importantly, how to hire the right people. My friends and clients that I've seen that have been able to scale immensely have been able to do two things I think really well. A lot of things really well, but as the simplest version, they're able to hire really super talented people to take over areas that they're not capable of doing early on. Let's say they're great in sales, they hire a great operations person. But then the next level of that is when they get to that next cliff, that 10 million cliff, the 25 million cliff, whatever it might be. Those are arbitrary numbers, but just for the idea, the best leaders are then able to look around the team and say, "Oh, this seat's missing. We need someone to fill this seat. When we were small, we didn't need it, but now we need this." And then, you know what? Johnny has been really good for us in this other seat. But now to get to the next level, that's not the right seat for Johnny. We want to keep Johnny. Johnny's great and he's amazing culture, but we've got to find a different place for Johnny because his ability to do the job at the scale from 10 to 25 or 25 to 50 or 50 to 100 million, he's never done it before. He doesn't, it'd be very challenging for him to do in the seat he's in now. And that's the people make a huge difference.
Yeah, no, I will push back you on a little bit here. McKinsey and Company, roughly 1 in 200 companies are true scale ups that only, that the fact of the matter is very few companies actually scale. And, and you brought up probably right there one of the biggest reasons why I talk about it in the book is people. I break it into 4 sections. Each section, start, scale, exit, repeat, is broken into people, money, story, and systems. And people, one of the number one reasons I believe, this is my thesis, and again, challenge me. I like it. I love this back and forth. Don't, we're just having a conversation. And by the way, if you're in the audience, you want to come on stage, you want to ask a question of Matt, or you have a story to share about your scaling efforts, please come on stage. This is Friday afternoon. We're having fun. It's Clubhouse. Just come join us on stage. But Matt, so my thesis is that number one reason why companies fail to scale, why we have such low numbers of successful companies actually scaling, is that the entrepreneur is in the way, that they're the number one problem, that they delegate tasks in start mode, but they don't delegate responsibilities in scale mode, that they don't have the ability to transform themselves personally and then bring on the team that you started talking about a minute ago. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, by the way, I agree 100%. And that's those leaders, those founders that are learners, that are able to work on themselves. They're able to comfortable joining a peer group like an EO or YPO. They're comfortable having a coach. They're comfortable reading books or articles. They don't feel like they know it all. It's a huge difference. One of the questions I challenge my clients is to ask themselves, is it you or is it them? And when leaders are in a situation where something's not going right, or there's someone thinks they're micromanaging, I'll ask the founder, hey, is it you? Are you involved in these things, these other tasks, because you don't like to micromanage, you don't feel comfortable that, if it's not done your way? Or is it them, meaning is it the employee that isn't the right person in the seat and doesn't have the training, whatever it might be? I talk a lot about with my clients about Jack Daly. I'm sure Jack Daly talks about high payoff activities, PAs, HPAs. And I'll ask my clients, what are your top 3 to 5 high payoff activities? The things that you do really well, that you enjoy doing, and that also has a high impact on the business. And are you spending 80% of your time on those 3 to 5 high payoff activities? And if you're not, why not? What is causing you to get involved in all that other stuff as opposed to focusing your time?
Hello, can you hear me now? I'm having technical problems here with making a phone call. Medium.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So Jack Daly partnered with us on the Scale Workbook. Jack
Yeah.
Daly and Dan Larson on how to create the ultimate sales guide. And I partnered with Patrick TN on the Scale Workbook. I'm sorry, Scale Workbook. It's just like an addition to the book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. But it's a really cool book. It's got about 60 exercises. It's got GPTs or AIs embedded throughout. And we partnered. Look, I thought, if I'm going to make this better, let me go to the source. And so I went to the source for Rhythm Systems and for Jack Daly's and Dan Larson's how to create the ultimate sales playbook. I have a friend, he's an EO. I don't know if you know him. He was interviewed in the book, but his business was very simple. It was just selling shipping, and he's done it over and over again. Sold his company for couple $100 million, and he's doing it again with his son and a third time. And he's just a very simple system. That's the thing about scale, is a lot of the systems you can repeat them, right? You can just simply implement them and repeat them. But you need to really invest in bringing the right, I don't know, do you bring the right consultants in, the right coach, or whatever it is, to make certain that you can scale scale the systems in your company? And an example of that is the sales playbook. I think that's one of the keys for every company to succeed, is to have a proper sales platform or sales playbook. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Jack Daly has convinced me of the value of the sales playbook. In fact, I actually taught one of his online courses a couple of years back. And so really got invested in understanding the sales playbook. And yeah, to me, sales is a process. It's interesting when my partner and I are very different in personality. My partner, David Redlick, he is a sales and marketing whiz and incredible with people, creative, out of the box thinker. I'm operations. I ran the operations, finance, and HR side. And it was a wonderful partnership. We really are perfect complements. Ironically, though, when we started the sales, we started about 4 years into our company. We realized that we were selling products online. We were emailing our customers tons and tons of orders. But when we were not doing any proactive calls to our clients, to our customers to ask them to order the next case of toilet paper or paper plates or office supplies, whatever it might be. And so we decided, all right, this is Rembrandt's in the attic. We're gonna start a sales team. We're gonna build up and start doing outbound calls. When we did, I ended up running the sales team at the very beginning or organizing it, let's call it. We put someone else in charge of it, but I ended up leading that process because I was the operations person, even though it was the sales department. We brought Dave in for the subject matter expertise, but in the end, sales is a process. So we created a process. We hired a consultant to help us create scripts. So the sales playbook and the mindset of sales as a process, Jack's embedded into my brain. And I encourage my clients to do the same.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can learn from these authors and experts who've done it before. So we've talked about a little bit about the systems. We've talked a little bit about people. Maybe we could go a little bit more into people first before I move on to story and money. But let's talk a little bit more about people. And one of the things that you have in start mode is you're this dominant entrepreneur who controls everything. And again, mentioned delegate tasks and gets the business off the ground. And they've been successful at what they've done, and they've got to change their mindset. And then they have to hire great leaders around them. And one of the things that we brought in was profiling, disc profiling, understanding who are the types of people. First of all, what are the positions we want to 10x our business, right? If you're going to go from a million to 10 million, what are the positions we want to put into place? And then who are the types of people we want in place, their personality profile, their experience profile. And even in a lot Jack Welch's hire people with runway, like you want someone who's already been working at a $10 million company. By the way, not at a $1 billion company. I've seen that before. It always fails. When you take somebody from a $1 billion company into a $1 million company, it just doesn't work. They just don't have that DIY mentality, right? But so hiring people, the right type of people, and surrounding yourself with leaders, that's probably one of the biggest things that I did to transform my companies in the past to become so successful.
Yeah, 100%. Everything starts with hiring. And if you get the hiring, and with the getting the hire right, it includes a lot of things that I can elaborate on. But if you get the hiring, everything flows from there. I've seen clients, and even at our company, it took us, Dave and I were at an inflection point. We had grown the business. I want to say it was year 5. We had got into $11 million in revenue. And we said, all right, we've done great, but now we're kind of not, we went from 0 to 1 million, 1 million to 5 million the next year, 5 million to 11 million the next year. And then we started staggering a little bit. We ended up at 12 that year. And we said, we need to figure out how to get more in e-commerce marketing. We were an e-commerce company. Marketing was important. So we decided we're going to hire a head of marketing. We put out a job posting. I think we set the salary at $75,000 or $80,000, hired someone who did not work out at all. It was the wrong person, the wrong level person. We did it again, upped it a little bit. And then same thing, second person. Now we're like 6, 8 months in already, maybe 9 months. Finally, we realized, all right, we want to go from around 10 million to 50 million. And we need to find someone who has been around a company who has done that. And finally, we upped the salary significantly, and we went out and found the right person, third try. But when we found her, oh my gosh, the next thing, she's got different processes and systems and knowledge and experience. And she was able to hire people on the marketing team, and it all changed. We jumped up. By the time we ended up hiring her that year, we ended up doing 14 million. The next year we went to 20. I think the next year 26. And it
Yeah.
wasn't all her, to be fair. It was everybody contributing and a lot of things were going on, but she was a really important part of that.
So do you look
that
at profiling? I know that's something I learned through EO, through disc profiling. There's Myers-Briggs out there. Have you played with that at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I am actually a certified DISC implementer. So I use DISC with clients, really in the scope of team dynamics more than individual and more than hiring. I actually really loved predictive index for hiring. A guy named Vic Coppola was a mentor of mine, and we got the DISC about the predictive index from him years back, and he's been a mentor to me forever. But what I really, to me, what I like about I'll encourage use any tool, any personality profile. But the key in my mind is every job has its own profile of what you're looking for. And so what the beauty of the predictive index is that you create a job profile for the job. And then that spits out a graph. And then when you hire candidates, you're comparing that candidate to that job profile that you've custom created for that particular job. You could do it on this too. It's the same idea. But I also think it's one part of the equation. I think there's a lot in hiring. I'm a huge believer in identifying what are the core values of the company, what are the 3 to 5 key things that make a good cultural fit for the company. And then I want to know that you're interviewing against each one of those core values in every single interview, every candidate you're screening. Core value number 1, get it done. We as a company have 5 to 10 interview questions that you can pull from for get it done. But when you interview candidates, you need to be able to say at the end, we feel really good that they're going to be someone who gets it done. Core value number 2, and so on. I think the personality profile is a part of it. Core values are part of it. Another key part, what are the 3 to 5 job functions we want from this person? I see a lot of job descriptions where there's 20 things that we want this person to do. Well, that's great. But let's boil it down to 3 to 5 for the hiring process. And let's make sure we're really screening them using, by the way, you mentioned Jack Welch, Brad Smart, and then Jeff Smart with the top grading. I really
Yeah, I
believe
like
that.
top rating.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And that job scorecard comes from Jeff's book, and I think probably from Brad's book before that. But I want to know those 3 to 5 job functions that this person's going to do. And in my interview process, I want to ask them questions about what they have done in the past. Tell me about at your last job. What were you hired to do? What did you achieve? How did it go? Because I want to know what they've done relative to what I want them to do.
I feel like we're doing a flyover here today, right? We're not getting in deep. You can tell there's so much in here. There's so much good stuff. And I know you can pick it up in Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. The scale section is the largest section of the book. You can pick it up in the scale workbook, the official workbook, but also just listening here today. But we really are doing a flyover. You can go deep into any one of these topics. We could spend an hour on. We could talk about core values for an hour, right? That's something that I definitely learned from Burn Harnish. That was one thing that I pulled from him in creating core value statements and understanding. So I took it a little further, Matt. I actually brought in core values, personal core values. And then I did an exercise with my forum group. This is a group of people who meet every month in EO. We all did a personal core value exercise. Then I brought that into forums, core values for your forum. And then I brought that into obviously the companies, core values in the companies. We have them in all of our companies now. And they're generally 4 to 6 statements that are very memorable because quite frankly, a lot of the mission statements and whatnot that people create are not memorable. They don't have an impact. And when you make them memorable, it makes a difference. Maybe you could touch upon that a little bit and we'll jump back into story and money. I do want to cover a whole 4 areas. I know we're doing a flyover today.
Sure. Yeah, no, the idea of making the core values memorable is great. I had clients who've done some really creative things. We actually at Restock It, we had them obviously post on our wall. We used the core values for interviewing. We used the core values also for recognition and storytelling. And the best way to me to get people to remember the core values is to have them looking around to call people out, so to speak, for exhibiting the core values. So we actually had every Tuesday, we had a company-wide huddle. And at the company-wide huddle, anyone could recognize anyone else in the company with what was called a swoosh, which was part of our logo. And a swoosh was, hey, Holly, great job for digging in to understand why things happen. One of our core values was dig in. And basically, Holly, great job for digging in to that issue on the website yesterday. By solving it so quickly, you were able to save us X thousand dollars. And then what we would do is we had mini icons for each one of the core values. So we actually had for dig, we had shovels and mini shovels. So somebody would hand her a mini shovel and then she would put it into a canister on her desk. And we had remote people as well back then, and they would have a virtual version. But the idea was to give that visual impact and the storytelling impact to get people to remember them over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So again, if you're in the audience, come join us on stage here. It's great to have a conversation with Matt. Ludin just jumped on stage right now. But if you want in the audience, just feel free to raise your hand, jump on stage and ask a question or share an experience of how you scaled, some breakthrough that you made that you can share with the community here. And Michelle, I know that she's usually my co-host, Matt, but she was busy a little bit it's earlier in the show. And I don't know if you're available yet, Michelle, to contribute on paw.com, but let's jump over to story. Okay. So we talked about people, we talked about systems, the goal setting, the values, those kind of things, the systems. Let's talk about the story. This is probably one of the most interesting things that, again, I learned it from, I think it was Jim Collins and then Vern Harnish on something called an X Factor. We were able to put together at Hostopia in 2006 an X Factor where we became the best in the world at migrations. Okay, moving websites, moving emails, whatnot. And we were able to win a major contract with Earthlink and then Vodafone and then Verizon and then AT&T. We won every telecom after we came out with the X Factor. And the X Factor was be the best in the world at migrations. And then we came up with a nearly unbearable brand promise, which was a 100% migration guarantee. And we've seen it happen over and over again in history. Domino's became the largest pizza company in the world because of 30 minutes are free, right? We see stories over and over again, like National Car Rental, just show up and use access the car and you don't line up. And Vern Harnish describes this as being a bottleneck, like that if you can identify a bottleneck in a particular industry and solve that bottleneck where nobody else can, that can give you an advantage that you are different than your competitors and have something more than they have. I don't know if you've worked with your clients a lot on X Factor, but it's the hardest thing to do is come up with an X Factor. It's taken me, at Hostopia, it took us 6 years to come up with it. At each one of our companies, it is challenging. Like, it really is a tough one.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I love the concept and very familiar with it. I did a program with Vern called Birthing a Giants, which is an executive program for entrepreneurs through EO back then. Anyway, wonderful program, 60 entrepreneurs for 4 days in a row together for 3 years in a row. And Vern, one of the years, I think it was year 2, I want to say, Vern is talking about the concept of X Factor and explaining it. And there's a guy that sits at the front of the room, and I can share his name because he's written a book about it and been out there with it. A guy named Barrett Ursek sitting in the front of the room, and then at some point during the day, he disappeared. We never saw him again, and like we found out later that he was sitting there listening to Vern talk about X Factor, and then he left because he figured it out. And what he figured out back then, so he was in the landscaping business, and he was sitting there and Vern was talking about X Factor. He's saying, what's the bottleneck? What's the barrier in my industry? And it was quoting. Back then, this was the early 2000s. He had gardeners out there mowing lawns and yards. And then they would, in their free time, they'd knock on doors to give a quote to another neighbor. And they have to measure the yard in order to figure out how much to quote. Barrett realized that, there's this at the time, a new tool from Microsoft that was like a maps tool. I forget what it was called, but you could see real estate from satellites. And he could set up customer service, really talented customer service people who weren't giving a quote on a piece of paper that was sitting in a truck with maybe coffee stain, but rather calling customers in the area, giving them quotes directly on the phone and closing deals much faster. And it was a huge impact for his business. He built it, sold his business very successfully. So yeah, I think it is very hard though to isolate down to that thing. That's a Nirvana example. They all don't come like that. That's a lot of them don't come that quickly.
No, they don't. An X Factor can be very tricky to put together, but when you get it, the effect can be huge. Like when we got it at Hostopia, it would literally let us to triple our revenue and dominate the market. And even 15 to 20 years later, I think it was 20 years now. Oh my gosh, since I sold the company, almost 20 years, 18 years now, they still have a pretty strong market position with all the telecoms in providing those services. And we were up against billion-dollar companies and whatnot, but it was only once we figured out that we had to be the best in the world at this one thing. And what's interesting, Matt, about that one thing that we were the best in the world at, it mattered. Because the mid-level executives at telecoms, they feared one thing more than anything else, and that's losing their job. And the number one reason they could lose their job is migrations. So we addressed that bottleneck. We fixed that bottleneck and became the best in the world at it. We might not have even had the best technology, but we became the best in the world at that one thing. And that's what helped us accelerate the company and grow and sell to a Fortune 500 company. But in any case, then the fourth, so again, there's four components, right? So you've got the story, which we talked about the X factor here, leading into a nearly unbearable brand promise. We've got the people. We talked about the individual. We talked about hiring people. We have the systems. We talked about the goal setting and the profiling and top grading and those kind of things. Top grading is a company that has some pretty good philosophies around ensuring that you hire the right type of people. Can you talk a bit about top grading? I know we brushed over that, and then we'll jump into money, the fourth one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I love top grading. Brad Smart wrote a book called Top Grading. He worked with Jack Welch at GM back in the early days. Top grading, though, has two connotations. The original connotation was top grading, and the way Jack Welch had spoken about it was every year I think he said they would fire the bottom 10% of the employees to be able to refresh. So that's one thought. That's not exactly the side that I subscribe to when I talk about it. I talk about the part about the discipline process of a hiring process. And Brad Smart wrote the original book. And then Jeff, his son, wrote another book called Who. And that book is phenomenal. And to be fair, Brad's book's phenomenal as well, but it's like 700 pages. It's very thick. He's written some follow-up since. Jeff's book is much shorter, and they're both amazing. But the idea is similar to what I said. Let's create a job scorecard for every position. Let's have a disciplined process for hiring. Let's add disciplined questions that we ask. Because again, if we get hiring right, everything becomes a lot easier. So yeah, I highly encourage picking up the book, either Top Grading by Brad Smart or Who by Jeff Smart.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Matt, about creating that. It's kind of like the Bible of who you're hiring and what they do. I do believe that people do crave that clarity for the most part. But one thing I just want to add to that is that it goes the same with promotions as well, right? Like one thing we like to do is everybody wants a promotion, but there needs to be that need within the company. And I think if you really stay with that, you do give people like a clear growth path, and it is better for the organization, which should mean that it's better for everyone else as well.
Yep. Yep.
All right, we've also got Dr. Roshanak here on stage, and I thought I called you up, doctor, because I thought a great question for you is this mentality, this going from start mode to scale mode. Earlier, I quoted a statistic that only 1 in 200 companies that actually get into a true scale up mode. And what do you think is going on in the mind of the entrepreneur? And Doctor's been a regular guest here on our show. She is an expert on the entrepreneurial mind. All right. So it'd be interesting to hear what you think, Matt, about what Doctor has on this topic.
Can I ask a question before I
Sure.
ask the question? Thank you so much. So I love what I'm hearing and I'm learning a lot as always. And thank you so much. My question is this. Let's suppose, because while you're talking, I suddenly thought of an X factor. Shocking, but true. I know. And my question is, okay, so Domino said 30 minutes are free. What's to keep another company from copying what you have, your tech, whatever? And so what is it that you have the X factor, but also you maintain that status and are able to scale the way you do?
Do you want to take that first, Matt? Or do you want me to start it?
No, go ahead.
All right. So it's interesting you bring that up because when you create we were told we were going to lose a multi-million-dollar, probably $10 million contract for Earthlink. And we came up with this X Factor idea to save the deal. And the idea was 100% migration guarantee. Now, when I say 100% migration guarantee, I meant we would have to pay the fair market value for every website that we lost in a migration which would impact the value of that company, which would be $350 per migration. So so that is not easy when you do 80,000 websites. Okay, that was not an easy thing to swallow. I call it the nearly unbearable brand promise because it really is nearly unbearable. But what we did is we re-engineered our entire organization and our company to ensure that we could deliver on that X factor. And it was not easy. Okay. Domino's Pizza had to re-engineer. There's a company in Austin called Cookie Delivery. And what they were doing, they were facing a competition of other bakeries and delivering cookies that just were not different. And they made a guarantee that, no, we'll deliver them hot. And you know how they won their X factor there is they decided to build a truck that can bake the cookies on the way to the customer. So when the customer received them, they were piping hot. That's an X factor. That's something unique and different that your competitors don't have. It's
But
not
can
easy to
your
do.
competitor get that, for example, the piece of machinery or the Microsoft tool that can't? Something so obviously what you're doing is very hard and it's
They
costly, it's
do.
harmful. But what about ultimately being able to do it 30 minutes or having an oven on the truck or having using that Microsoft tool? What about something like that?
No, and people do catch up, right? And then it doesn't become an X factor anymore. And it does become, but you know what? Domino's Pizza stopped offering 30 minutes of free in I don't know, 25 years ago or something like that, 20 years ago. You don't even, I still, but they stopped offering it and they didn't need to because they were the largest pizza company in the world. But you just need enough time to be different and have an advantage over the competitors. Look at National Car Rental. They became the largest car rental company in the world, right? And they just needed enough time to solve a bottleneck in an industry better than anyone else before other people could copy them. But it does fascinate me how there are so many other rental car companies that have not copied National Car Rental. And if you don't know the experience, it's pretty amazing. You just simply show up at the airport, get in the car, and go. And with apps today and this, that, and the other, it's not a hard concept to get your head around, right? But obviously, they can copy, but there's a lot to it. Re-engineering the way the security works in the airports and all over the world, and very few people have actually copied National Car Rental. I find that fascinating. But you can copy, and other companies have copied, but that's not copying. Generally, doesn't work. You're number two or number three. You generally don't succeed at it. One of the problem with these 30-minute or free pizza companies is the quality of the product wasn't very good. A number of competitors came out with, like Papa John's, came out with, we're actually better this way, and they differentiate themselves. It's all about being different. And I'm talking about even a real estate business. We have a real estate business, Airbnbs in North Captiva, and we were brainstorming, how can we be different than all the other properties, all the other Airbnbs? And we came up with an idea that why don't we put Westin Heavenly beds in every single one of our luxury homes? And we'll have one dock that can be used only for our customers, and just something that's unique and different on that island that they can get that no one else can get. People can copy, they can catch up. By then, hopefully you've gotten your head start and you've done very well. Do you want to take on that second question or the first question I asked you there, doctor, about the mindset of the entrepreneur? I know this is something that you have
I'm
a
sorry, could
strong
you repeat
expertise
it
on.
again? I want to get it right. I only got I remember only part of it. Would you mind to repeat that?
This idea of going from start mode to scale mode, right? To this idea that only 1 in 200 companies, according to McKinsey, I forgot the right name. I'm doing this by memory, a lot of these statistics, but I think it was McKinsey. It is McKinsey and Company. Okay, I just got it on my screen here. Only 1 in 200 companies that actually start are true scale-ups. And I'm making the case, and I made the case with Matt, and I think Matt's agreed that one of the major reasons why that people and founders in startup mode don't get to scale mode is they're stuck in the way they think about start, and they need to transform themselves as individuals. And that's a very difficult transformation.
And the question is?
And the question is, since you're you're the mind expert, why is it that so few of these entrepreneurs can actually make that shift? And do you have any advice for entrepreneurs who want to make the shift from start mode to scale mode?
That's an amazing question. And we discussed that a little bit last week. So I'll try to give something a little bit different. When you're in start mode, when you're a founder, you're good at something. You have an idea, you're an engineer, there's something that you can do, and it's very hands-on. And there's this, you all know this, there's this sort of entrepreneurial mindset culture of I'm scrappy and the expectation of how you approach it and what you're supposed to do, you fill. There's a fit, there's a hand in glove fit of I'm like this, and this is how they do it. And so every decision that I make is going to be valid because it fits into that culture and also, and this is key, every decision I make is important. So the focus is on me, on a small thing, and on building, because you're scaling in both cases, you're building, but on building something from scratch that I can do because it's my idea and it's my way. Great. In scale mode, you have to do something completely different. You talk about all the time, Colin. You need systems. You need repeatable processes. You need leadership teams, strong leadership teams, as Matt was just talking about, the right people in the right position. You need to delegate. It's completely different than what most
Why?
founders
Why
are
do
doing.
so few startup founders make this mental leap?
What do you mean make the mental leap?
Like, it's so few founders.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
telling you. So switching from who you are and the identity that you have. Okay, your brain will fight you even if you attack your identity. It will fight you as if it were fighting somebody who is physically attacking you. That's how your brain works, which is why so many times that we try to change ourselves, it doesn't work. We quote unquote self-sabotage. So if you have to move into a completely different identity, it is extremely difficult for founders who don't want to fail in the way that is. So if you start a company, if you have a startup and fail fast, all of that is acceptable. It's not seen as like a failure of you yourself, right? But if you go and you try to scale, everything that mattered, that made you who you are and your identity has to change. There is a personal identity transition that is required. And that also goes from you being the engineer, the scrappy person, the whatever, to being a human manager and a systems builder and manager. So instead of building everything yourself, you're building an organization that does the things that a lot of the startup founders, they end up micromanaging and the whole thing falls apart. Why? Because they can't transition from the identity they had and the talents that they had into this new set of skills that they need and this new identity that they need. So it's a lot of it has to do, and I'm not going to go over what we've talked about in the last couple of episodes, which is about the fears and how we see ourselves. And Michelle remembers the accountability and what that means. So fear of failure, fear of success, all those kinds of things, because we've already done that. This is an amazing show. So the only honor that I can do, unless you want me to repeat myself, is to say that it is a change of a fundamental set of skills and an identity. And that is quite a lot for someone who's not thinking it from the mindset of a founder to the mindset of someone who's got a large scale up business to sell. Because remember, you're very attached to what you built. It's part and parcel of who you are. So you also don't want to give that away. That's a very subtle but important.
Interesting. I love that identity connection. Yeah. Matt.
By the way, I agree with everything that you just said. What I would add, just a couple little thoughts. One is I think self-awareness plays a huge role in this. There are people who are knowers and people who are learners. And I think those learners who are comfortable and self-aware enough to recognize and appreciate that they might not know everything is a huge starting point. And then the other thing is, in addition to what you just spoke about, and then also the idea of hiring the right people, which you spoke about, I think there's kind of three extra things that the ones that I've seen really are able to figure out whether they do all three of these things or one or two of them. One is comfortable reading and learning and just learning more, identifying new tools, how to do it better, talking to people. The second is they're comfortable joining a peer group, whether it's EO or Vistage, or I've been in YPO now, I think 17 years, and I've gotten so much out of YPO and EO before it. And by learning from peers, learning from other people who are in similar seats as I am. And then the last is find a mentor or a coach, because I think, again, why would anybody who's scaling a business think that they know it all and they couldn't benefit from having someone who's been there, done that, to be able to help them through the process?
Yeah. And we had Bridget Weston on this show, and she was the CEO of Score. They have 10,000 volunteers, mentors, and she made the claim that you can increase your chance of scaling, your chance of success by 3 times. All right. We also have Matt, another Matt on stage. And Matt, do you have a experience share or a question for our Matt or even Doctor here? Matt.
Hey, thanks for that. I came up because what a doctor said really resonated with me, and I wanted to see, maybe receive some advice because I've recognized I've reached a bottleneck in my journey here as a sole startup indie company. And that bottleneck is I find that when it comes to scaling, the behavior that is most effective with scaling, I find that to be generally incompatible with how I prefer to conduct myself. And yeah, I'm not too sure how to deal with that in a way without compromising.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk, isn't there? Go ahead, Doctor.
Okay. So if you've reached a bottleneck, the first step, as I guess you've done, is to recognize that you reached a bottleneck, but also recognize that the bottleneck may be your way of leading. How do you lead? And this goes back to the identity thing and to much of what the other Matt on the stage was saying is, are you in this alone? Do you have a fixed mindset of how things must go forward? And and what is the way in which you think you should lead? Because one of the things that happens, as I was saying before when I was talking about this whole identity aspect of it, is that for a lot of founders, and this is what I was saying, their identity is really fused with the company. That's what I was talking about when I was talking about the attachment factor. The founder is this visionary of whatever that product is, right? They are the chief problem solver as well as the chief everything else. And so they create the culture, they are the salesperson, they're the solutions person, they're everything. They're the end all be all, the alpha and the omega. So they are the practical, logical, and emotional engine of the business. And so that identity that you have early on is incredibly powerful. And the company needs that intensity, that conviction, that speed, that personal sacrifice in order to be birthed, right? Birthing is not easy. Ask any woman, ask any mother. The thing that is that if you think I am the company, which pretty much every founder thinks, you need to shift to I am building the company so it can go beyond me. Think again, let's use that analogy of you're a parent, you're a mother, you give birth to a child, and then you never want that child to grow up and go away and do their own thing. It's very hard to let go. So it's a mindset shift. It's a shift of your attachment that has fused the identity of yourself with your company of not I am the company, but that you are in fact. And so it depends also when you're first building. This is very helpful for people who are just starting to start already with the I'm not the company. I'm building something that I want to grow beyond me. That's not saying that you're going to leave it, but you want it like parents want their kids to be better than them. You want this to grow beyond you. That means, as I think you mentioned, Matt, is that you need a tremendous amount of self awareness. And for you to understand where your strengths are is very important. And those same strengths, what got you here, are the things that are going to get you stuck. That becomes your bottleneck and won't allow you to get there. There's a famous book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, right? So you need a different set of skills, as I was saying, so that you can move forward and shift from the architect and the operator, from the hero, the it guy of the company, to someone who's taking a back seat and going from behind the scenes and creating the systems that allow it to flourish. So I can tell you a lot more about that, but you wanted to know what you can do. First and foremost, recognize that if you are the reason, if the way that you're leading is the bottleneck, it's not a criticism. It's not a criticism. All it is a sign that your company, because it's a sign of your success, and that your company has outgrown the operating system that got it started. I teach right now how to repattern your nervous system because nobody's running Windows 98 on a 2026 laptop, right? You're not running an iOS from 2015 on a 2026 iPhone, right? So you update your operating systems all the time on your tech, but do you do it on yourself? And do you do it for your company? You have to be able to change and update your operating system because your company, like you, is dynamic and a different context requires different strategies. So ask yourself, am I leading the company forward or has the company become organized around my limitations? Start with that. and see what your answers are. And then you can start to examine the skills gap between what was required, what you did to build the company, and what the capabilities are for a person who is scaling. And that is Colin's forte. So I would turn that over to him.
I'll turn it back to Matt.
Yeah, I agree with that thought. I think ultimately what I've seen is there are a number of people who love to start businesses but not run the business. And what they end up doing is they figure out how to exit the business, sell the business because they really enjoy and are skilled at that startup mode. But once it gets to scaling and running it day to day, it's boring. And so those people tend to become serial entrepreneurs and start a lot of businesses and figure out how to have an exit ramp for those businesses that's successful.
I love what you just said. I think it's brilliant and it's so important. And people don't think about, if that's what you want to do, then amazing. And don't feel like obliged that you've started this. And now instead of tanking the company, you can let someone else, other leadership, go ahead and scale it and then do what you like to do and what you do best. I love what you just said, Matt. That's great.
Yeah, I find it boring actually startup mode because startup mode goes very slow. It's like very slow. And then you're like, you got one customer and then you got two customers. I love scale mode. That's exciting for me. And to me, it's more, I guess I've done scale mode so many times that works for me. And that's why I run an incubator. I've invested in 20 companies and I let the startups grind it out. And once they start getting some traction, then I'll jump in and help them out.
Yeah, but what both of you are saying is that you recognize where your strengths are and you're happy to apply yourself in a way that's the win-win situation for yourself and for the company.
Yeah. All right, Matt, I know we went over time by 2 minutes here, but Matt, any last thoughts? And I was going to do a whole thing about coaching and importance of coaching. If you have a last thought, maybe you can incorporate a little bit about, because for me, it's changed my life having coaches. And I mentioned Score. They're free, by the way, on Score. You can actually get a paid coach. Matt, you're a paid coach. Can you talk a little bit about that as you close out and how people can contact you?
Yeah, sure. So I believe mentors, coaches, friends, peers, the idea of having someone that you can lean on, it's a lonely seat to be that entrepreneur, leader, CEO. There's nobody, and a lot of your friends who are in other industries, they don't know what you're dealing with. They don't understand the risks that you're taking on. So having other people to be able to share, I've been coaching now for it'll be 13 years in July. And the ability to be that peer confidant to my clients is very impactful for them. And to have that sounding board that they can talk through issues with has been really impactful. And when we were running our business, we had coaches, a number for a long time, helping us through our journey as well. So yeah, I highly encourage, again, if you're not looking to afford a coach, if you can't afford a coach, find a peer entrepreneur. But in terms of finding me, when I started doing this, I decided I didn't want to be doing sales and marketing, which is what my partner did. And so I actually said, if I can get away with not having any marketing and maybe not even having a website, that I was going to try to do that. But luckily, almost 13 years in, I've been fortunate enough to have a nice flow of clients. So I have not been doing marketing. So the LinkedIn is the way to find me. My name is Matt Cutler with a K, Kuttler, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I like using LinkedIn. All right. So you've been listening to our podcast and live show on Clubhouse. By the way, get on the mailing list for Startup Club. We've got thousands of people on this mailing list. Every month we do one sort of masterclass email every single month. And next Friday, we're coming out with the next email. And it's the longest intensive email you'll get in your monthly inbox. We do the exact opposite of what everybody else probably recommends you do. We go real deep into topics. And we explore what happened in Startup Club and all the articles that came out over the last 30 days. So do go to startup.club, sign up to the email list. And Matt, I know we're on LinkedIn, but if you haven't already done so, tag with him because he's not just a coach who does this as a coach. I would say he's an entrepreneur who has been very successful and then he's coached others. And if you're looking for a coach to help you take it to the next level, he might be the right guy, or if not, he will point you to the right person. Thank you very much again, Doctor, for coming on stage. And Mimi, our editor, she gets no credit. She works so hard on all these articles and Startup Club and everything. And if you haven't already done so, go to startup.club and check it out. I noticed we have more people in the audience today who are not in the member of the club on Clubhouse here. And you can simply become a member of Startup Club, and then they'll give you more notifications. So if you've got a little red dot beside you there, we got about 30, 40 people here who are not members of the club listening in, just join the club. It's easy. It costs nothing. And then you'll get more notifications. I think you can just click on the logo at the top of the screen here and join the club. We have 972,842 members in this club. We are the largest club on Clubhouse. I know Clubhouse has struggled, but our club's done very well. And so thank you very much. We'll see you all next Tuesday at 2:00 Eastern. And thanks again, Matt.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great. Really enjoyed it.
All right, bye.